Hello guys, welcome to our class of number 9, and on today's class we're going to make a little bit of more movement in the game, because as we have in our last class we have something like this. The bird was moving forward, but then you can play with it and make it go back and move up with jump, but at some point our little bird is out of the field of the camera and we can't see it anymore. So in today's class we are going to learn two different things. The first one is how to make the main camera follow our little bird. We're going to see two different ways of making it. And then the second thing that we're going to see is how to make this island, those three different islands right here and the water, move, so we have a little bit of a feeling of a parallax. Alright, so I'm going to explain later as well what parallax is, but let's start with the movement of the camera. So the first thing actually that we need to see right here, it's going to work with the camera as well. The camera needs to be moving at the same speed as the player. So right now, as we have on the script, I'm going to open the script right here. Right now, as we have on the script, the initial speed of the bird is equal to 100. So it means that as soon as the first frame starts in the game, the rigid body of the player will add a force in the direction of right, multiplied by the initial speed. And the initial speed is equal to 100. It means that if that speed is bigger or higher, the actual force will be stronger and the movement of the bird will be faster. We can take a look on this by changing the value of the variable. So here on the player we have force equal to 300 actually, and initial speed equals to 200. Force is the variable that we use inside of the jump, and initial speed is the variable that we use to make the movement of the bird faster or slower. So if I put like 500 right here and play the game, you will see that the bird is way faster. Okay, so I'm gonna go back with my 200, and that's what we're going to be doing with our main camera to make it follow the bird. We have two different ways of making it follow the bird. The first one, it's the easier one. We just drag and drop the main camera into the player. So we drag and drop the main camera into the player. So you can see that it's kind of looking as a drop down menu right here, and the main camera is inside of the player. Right here, everywhere the player goes, the main camera goes with it, because in that way we say that the main camera is a child of the player. It will follow all the movements that the player does. So if we play the game right now as the main camera as a child, you see that the camera is fixed in the player because it goes wherever the player goes. That's not exactly what you want, but maybe you want to do it in that way, and that way works. We're going to do a little bit different right here. It's going to work better because I'm going to detach the main camera to the player, so I'm going to remove. It's not a child anymore. In that way, the main camera will follow the player only in the axis X. It's not going to follow the Y. So it means that it's going to follow the player by the side, but it's not going to go up and down. So I think the feeling of the game, it's a little bit better. Okay, so in order to make the camera goes with the player, we need to make something very similar to what we have in the player. We need to have a rigid body in the main camera, and we have to add force into the main camera. So first of all, what we are going to do is to make the script that is going to make the main camera move. This script, I'm going to call it Parallax. Parallax because we are going to have this same script attached to the islands to make the Parallax Effect. Alright, so I'm gonna call it Parallax. You can call it camera movement, you can call it like automatical movement, doesn't really matter the name of the script. I'm gonna call it Parallax just because it's a little bit easier for me to later attach to the islands right here. Don't worry, I'm going to explain what parallax means in the further. If you already know, that's okay, but I'm going to get in more details after I write the script and after we have the camera moving. All right, so here on the script, I'm gonna go with right click on the mouse, create C# script. The name is going to be Parallax. I'm gonna open this script. And right here, it's going to be very similar to what we have on the player movement. I'm gonna change to the player movement script. You see that we have reach the body, we have initial speed, and we are adding the reach the body force to the game object, in this case to the player. The parallax will be very similar. First, let's make two variables, one for the reach the body and the other one for the initial speed. Okay, so we have our two variables, reach the body and initial speed. I put here 200 because it's the same as the one that we're using in the game. Okay, but you can put 100 as well, as it is on the script of the gameplay of the player. Doesn't really matter. It's your choice. They just need to be equal so the camera follows at the same speed. So here on start, I'm going to make the same thing as we did with the player. RB at force, vector 3 right, multiply by initial speed. The same thing, because it's the same kind of movement. RB. Alright, so in that way, we have a script that have reach the body, a variable that is going to represent the reach the body in our game. And we have initial speed that is going to represent the force, that the punch of how the force is going to be added to the game object. And then at the first frame, the reach the body is going to add a force in the direction of right, multiply it by the initial speed that we can change. The thing is, this script will have the same kind of effect that it does on the player if they both are in the same force, the same initial speed. They will be following at the same direction at the same speed. So the camera will be seeing the player in the same speed, but it won't go up and down, all right? Because it only goes right. We don't have the jump right here in the parallax, okay? All right, so in order to add this script to any kind of game object, in this case into the main camera, one thing that we need to do is actually to add a reach the body 2D to the main camera. So here on the main camera I have the reach the body. I'm gonna open the reach the body right here and I'm going to put gravity scale equals to 0. Why am I doing this? Because I don't want the main camera to fall. I don't want the gravity to affect the main camera. I only want the gravity to affect the bird. So the gravity scale will be equal to 0. After I do this, I will add component and write parallax, that the script that we had before. You see right here that the reach the body, it's none. In order to use the reach the body of the camera, what I'm going to be doing right here is to drag and drop the main camera into here. So it will be main camera into the main camera game object. The initial speed will be 200, the same as the player. So it means that it's going to follow the same velocity, the same speed at the same direction. So if I play the game right now, we have something like this. Okay, so this script, we can use the same script. We don't need to add a new one. This will work to the other game objects as well. We'll make it work to move the same way that we move on the main camera. But now we can make it move to different speeds to give to the player a parallax effect. Okay, so reach the time that I'm going to explain you guys what is a parallax effect. If you think about a parallax effect, one example that we have is a very how can I say, When you have something that is far away from you, if you move to somewhere, you don't see that thing moving the opposite direction the same speed because it's far away from you. But you have some object that is close to you. Let's say if you're running and the floor is very close to you. So when you go through the floor, it actually go with the same speed that you're going in one direction, it goes to the other direction because you're running from it. But if it's far away, you don't have this feeling. You have the feeling of this following you, where we can see parallax effect in our real life. One example is the moon. Imagine that you're running or you are in a car, you are in a movement, and you see the moon. You have the feeling of the moon following you. Of course, it's not following you. It's just because the moon is so far away from you that you don't have actually the feeling of actually being moving in a distance from it. So you don't have the feeling of moving outside from it. So it feels like the moon is following you. The same thing happens to any kind of object in real life. So another example, imagine that you're running like you're in a car and you look at the city and you have some buildings that are close to you, so they move faster, and the buildings that are very far away, or maybe you have some hills, some mountains, something like this, it doesn't feel like it's moving. It feels like it's following you. It's just because it's so far away that you don't have the feeling of actually getting distance from it, from your movement. Okay? So to give this real world feeling inside of our game, what we are going to be doing right here is to add movement to the game objects that we have in the scene, to add to the player a parallax effect. So in theory, what it does, it just make the game objects move at the same direction as the player. So for example, as close as a game object is from the player, the speed will be almost equal to 0. So if it's so close to the player that is in the same position as the player, the speed will be 0. So it's not going to move at all. It's going to keep in the same place. But if it's far away, it's going to increase the speed until you reach a point that is equal to the speed of the player. So it gives a sensation of not moving at all. Okay, I know that may be a little bit confusing with only words, but let's try to do it in our game, and I'm mostly sure that you guys will understand what I'm talking about. Here we already have the Parallax Script, so we can use the same script that we use to the main camera in other game objects. Just one thing that you need to be careful, you need to add rigid body to all game objects, you need to make gravity scale equals to 0, and then you need to add Parallax Effect and link the rigid body. I'm going to do it to do the same thing to all game objects that we have right here. So first one, the island, that one, add rigid body 2D. On rigid body 2D, gravity scale will be equals to 0. Then add Parallax Script and link the same game object. So island BG1 will be in island BG1. Initial speed, let it be 200 for now. We're going to change that later. Don't worry about this. Island BG2, add rigid body 2D, add parallax, rigid body 2D, gravity scale 0, add this to rigid body. Do the same thing to the third island, rigid body 2D, gravity scale 0, add parallax, link rigid body to rigid body. The last one, the water, add rigid body 2D, gravity scale 0, parallax, and then link water to the parallax. Alright, so all the game objects that exist in the game have rigid body 2D. All of them besides the player have gravity scale equals to 0, so it's not gonna fall. and all of them have parallax, and the speed of the parallax is actually 200 to all of them, even the player. So it means that they are all going to run forward in the same direction and the same speed. So the feeling that we're going to have if we play the game right now, it's that our bird is not moving forward at all. And that's not true actually, it's moving, but everything is moving with the player, so you don't have the feeling of it's moving. If we zoom out a little bit on the scene, you can see that this will move, but in the game we won't have this sensation. So one example is right here. You don't have the sensation right here, but it is moving right here. You see? But it's all moving all together at the same speed of 200, so you don't have the feeling. Okay, so how we can make the parallax work? It's not working right now because they are all moving at the same speed. How we can make the parallax work? If something is far away from the player, it will be almost in the same speed as the player, in this case 200. Or it can even be the same speed if you want, but it then will be very, very far, like the moon. If something is close to the player, it will need to be close to 0. Alright? So let's try and test this. So the water, I'm gonna put something like maybe 150. So it's less than the player. It means that it's going to be close to the player. And the islands, I'm gonna put island BG3, 150. You can even put like 160 or any other number close to this. I'm gonna put 150 to the island BG2, and the one that is very far, I'm gonna put like 100, and it needs to be bigger than the water just to have a feeling. I'm gonna put 170. So they are with different speeds. The closest they are to the player, the less they are in the initial speed, closest to 0 in this case. The farthest they are from the player, close the speed will be equal to the player. So if they are close, it's going to be near 200. If they are far from the player, it's going to be near 200. If they are close to the player, it's going to be near to 0. All right. So we have the feeling of parallax. So if I play the game right now, we have this feeling right here. I'm gonna maximize right here so we have a better viewing of this. It's gonna be this. You can see that they have this feeling of being closed or far away. You may thinking, okay, but the map is not, it's ended right here. It's easy to fix. You just go here, copy with the right click on the mouse, and paste. And you have the same game object, copy of the object. I'm gonna drag and drop until I'm gonna just drag it to the map until you have it connected. You see that it doesn't match, right? Because they are not on looping. One way to fix this is to go to the second water, sprite render, and make it flip on X. So it's going to invert the image to flip on X. In that way, the end of the one will be equal to the beginning of this, and we will have our game object in looping. Okay, and then you can play with this and make more islands. Let's copy these islands right here. Let's make it, and you can even put like different speeds to it. Let's say 160. You can play with this. Oops. Can play with the islands right here. Okay, and then when we play, we have something like this. We have our gameplay with a parallax effect. It gives us the effect that our game have some kind of a deepness. So it gives us like almost like a 3D feeling, only with a parallax effect. All right, so all these objects that we have right here besides the player, they are in the background. Okay, that's right, they are in the background. It means that they are behind the player. What if we have a game object that is in front of the player, in between the player and the camera, so it's not in the background? We say that this object is on the foreground. And they have a very cool feature to it. It also is not going to interact with the player because it's not on the same kind of a level as the player. So the background and the foreground, they don't collide or don't interact with the player. They are just visual. But the background actually moves closest to from 0 to closest to the velocity speed of the player, in this case 200. If we have an object in the foreground, it will go from 0 to a negative number. So it means that it's gonna run in the opposite direction. And we can make some tests with it. So I'm gonna pick one of these islands here on the res. I'm gonna pick one of them, like this island. First of all, actually, let's create a new game object. Empty, so it doesn't have anything. I'm gonna rename this to background, and I'm gonna put every single element of the background inside of these game objects, just to keep things organized, and then we can select them with the background. The other thing, I'm gonna put a new element that is going to be a foreground, so just as a test, okay? So I'm gonna drag and drop some islands right here. So we have this island that it's actually, let me take a look, I think it's too small for this. We are using 3, so 3, 3, and 3. Okay, and the thing is, it's going to be in front of the player, so it means right now we don't have a feeling because the ordering layer, the one that I was talking before in the last class, it's 0, it's the same layer as the player. So I'm gonna put 1 just to be in front of the player. And then this one will be huge, will be very, very huge. This island right here. And it's going to appear in the camera like this. You know? It's gonna have a feeling of a foreground element. This one, I'm gonna also add rigid body, 2D, and Parallax Script. Rigid body will be gravity scale 0, and the parallax, I'm gonna add the rigid body as we did on the other, and the initial speed will be negative. That's funny. I'm gonna put negative 50 just to give you guys a feeling. So we'll have a feeling of this appearing in front of the player. Let's test it. Okay, so you have a feeling of the player being in the middle of islands right there. This is a foreground element. So we can make a new game object, empty, call it foreground, and then drag and drop the islands to it. Okay, so we have background, foreground, and our player. Alright guys, so that's it for this class. You can make a map way bigger than this. So go there, play with this, make it bigger. We can use now to make it looping on the water. So if that was a problem before, it's not gonna be anymore. And on the next class, we are going to start actually building more of our map, and we're going to see how to make animations to the player. Right now, our player, it's not moving at all. So that's one thing that we are going, actually it's moving, but we don't have animation of making it clap the little wings. So that's what we're going to be doing in the next class. Okay, so that's it guys. Try to make the map on your own, try to put different speeds of them, play with it, and see you on the next class. Bye bye.